Hello and welcome back to Hollowponds Solo Sagas. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to talk about oracles. It's a how-to video, and so I've got notes, not a script but notes, so I will look down every now and then referring to my notes. I'll probably cut bits out, but we're going to talk about oracles. So I've produced a trifold that will accompany this, talking about oracles, and also we'll go through how to make oracles. So let's talk about those little tables that we call oracles. So first off, what is an oracle? Often in solo roleplay we'll refer to an oracle, and in essence there are two types of oracles that we're mainly talking about. We're talking about a closed question oracle, which is a yes/no oracle, and we're talking about an open question oracle, which gives you more sparks to think about, or various different prompts and ideas to then bounce off of to come up with different answers to your questions. And all of those oracles revolve around you asking a question of the oracle, as though you were asking your DM or GM a question about what the situation is you're looking at. Instead, what you're doing is you're asking the oracle a closed question, which would have a yes/no response, or an open question, which could have any response. So oracles are the things that you will need really to do solo role playing. There has to be an oracle of some kind of description as a tool for you to role playing. So let's talk about the closed question oracles first. Now, closed questions being the yes no. This can be as simple as flipping a coin. Heads is yes, tails is no. And I normally give advice that for this solo role playing, you want to tilt the question you're asking the yes no oracle, that the yes answer is slightly more interesting than the no. The yes answer pushes your story forward, creates more opportunities, creates more avenues of story or more conflict, and then we edge it that way with our yes no oracle. You can flip a coin and have just a binary yes no. You can roll a d6 and you can say different numbers result yes and no. Now, often with our yes no oracles, we want a little bit more detail than just binary yes no. So we can introduce a yes and, or a no but, a complication. Normally we would suggest that if you're going to build a yes no oracle or use one, you use the dice or part of the system that you are going to use anyway, so you don't need to break flow when asking a yes no question. So if your game of choice uses d20s, you can incorporate a d20 into it. Such as the dagger heart, I did a yes no oracle that used the 2d12, the duality dice. So we try and have a yes/no oracle, a closed question oracle, that uses the dice and the mechanism of the flow to not break the flow of the questioning. Because the goal is flow, not rules lawyering or making lots of mechanical bits, but to keep the flow going. Ask a question, get an answer, move on. That loop. Set a scene, ask a question, resolve, repeat. Just go through that loop. Next, we have our open question oracles. Now, the yes/no oracles, you don't really need to bring your imagination so much to interpret the answer, because it's a yes/no. You can interpret if you have the complications, the and or the but, or you have a complicated answer on response from your yes/no oracle, but from your closed question yes/no oracle. But mostly you don't need to have so much bringing your imagination. The open question oracles need you to bring your imagination. Now, we had a commenter a while back who said that they don't have an imagination at all. They have no imagination. They want there to be handheld through a process. How is that going to work? The open question oracle, which is the core backbone of most solo role-playing activities, need you to come with an imagination. You have to interpret the answers. Now, because you're getting answers from these tables, and again, if you're going to make your own, I would suggest use the dice of system. If your dice of system, like Lancer, uses d6s and d20s, have d20 tables or d66 tables or d666 tables, but use the dice of system to produce the tables of prompts. Prompts are best when they're tilted towards the system of choice. You don't want to be playing a game of Dragonbane or Daggerheart and then have cyberpunk-esque words coming out, such as neon and tarmac and rain-slicked, although rain-slicked would actually work. And equivalent flip side, you don't want to be playing in a built-up cyberpunk a dystopian world and then have grotto or other prompts of very fantasy tilts, elven. Those won't really work, you know, unless you're playing Shadowrun. They don't really work. So really, the best type of oracles for the open questions are ones that are built for the game you're playing, because all game settings have little tweaks that are specific to themselves. So the best type of oracles that you build are those. So where do you get those oracles from? So you can make them yourself. That's fine. You can really do. It's not difficult to do. You can buy them from a good creator, or there's more the generic type of tables that you could use instead, like Mythic. But I personally, I don't know about you, I have a bit of a problem with the Mythic tables. Now the tables are fine, but the Mythic system as a GME emulator, I have some problems with. Mythic oracles are too complicated for me. There are too many things to pay attention to when it comes to the chaos factor, the rolling doubles, the rolling under a certain value. Mythic tables, you can see the amount of love and care and went into Mythic tables, but for me personally, the Mythic oracle system is too complicated. I just want some verb tables and some nouns or some action words or some prompts and a yes/no oracle that's quite simple and flows. I don't particularly want to look up anything for a yes/no oracle, and for the words I want to be geared towards my game of choice. So my honest advice, if you're beginning solo play and you're beginning to use oracles or you want to get into oracles, Mythic is probably too complicated. Mythic is too complicated to be the first thing you dive into. Personally, my opinion, I think Mythic is too much. You want to start simple, and the simplest way to start is to make your own. So how do you make your own oracle tables? Closed questions, yes, no, simple. How do you make those open question oracles? So this is what I do. When I'm making a set of open, so this is what I did for Orkborg, this is what I did for all of the open question oracles that I make. First off, and you'll see it in Orkborg, it's clear, because each chapter of oracles about a hull, I write a paragraph of prose about the thing that I am going to be writing my oracles on. I try and get into the vibe of it. I write an oracle prose, and each time I come back to the tables to add more words, I read that oracle prose and I think about the area and I generate words that give that vibe. So if you're doing a cyberpunk one, you might write a piece of prose about their rain-slicked, it depends where you're doing it. So if you're going to do the gritty combat zone area, you might write some prose about people on the street corners with blankets out selling wares, about punks graffitiing street corners, the rain-slick depression, police drones going by, no police being present. Write a scene that encapsulates the place you want to be, and then you can pull words out of that scene, and those words will then spark other words, and you fill up your table. So within Cyberpunk, using D10s, you can have a percentage table, that's fine. So 100 is a lot to do, and it might take you a while to do, but you will get there in the end. You might want to break it down smaller and do a D10 table, or you could do 2 D10 added, so you'll go between 2 and 20, so you have 19 options in that table, and do it that way. But write yourself a piece of prose that makes you really feel the thing that you're going to create a table for, and then use words that come out of it. You can grab a thesaurus and help it for that. You can use online dictionaries. You can just pull out some words of that piece of prose you've written. The more you can write on that place that is much more, you know, evocative of the feel you want to go for, the easier it will be to generate those words for the open question oracles. So you've got your open oracle. You've found one off the internet, you've bought one from a really good vendor on DriveThruRPG called Hollowponds Silo Sagas, or you've spent the time and you've made your own open oracle. So you're in a session and you have a question, and then you roll on the oracle. How do you actually do that? So a lot of people's questions are around, okay, but how do I do it? It's fine, say use an open oracle, but how do I do it? So first off, you think about the scene, you set a scene, and then you're going to ask some questions. So I'm going to assume that either I've dealt with, I'm sure I've dealt with this in another video, but if not, I will do it at some point in the future. Sorry, airplane. And I talk about it in one of the sections of my how to start solo role-playing Trifold that is out. Is you set the scene. It's the loop, the solo play game loop that pretty much all solo games revolve around the same thing. Set a scene, ask some questions, resolve the questions, repeat. We do that loop. So we've set a scene and we have questions to ask. They're not yes, no, they're more open. What have we found down this alleyway? Or what are the motives of the bad guy? Or I've come into a courtyard, we've climbed over a fence, this is Duckbane, we climb over a fence, we come into a courtyard, what's there? So yes, no doesn't answer it, so we need to use our open question oracles. So what do? We roll on our open question oracles and we pull out 2, maybe 3, not 1, 2 or 3 words. We might do a mixture of verbs, a mixture of nouns, a mixture of statements, a mixture of evocative feelings, a mixture of sights or sounds, a mixture of contents. We collect those words together and then we work them improv. We know the scene where we are, so we take those words and we see what sort of things do they trigger us, fill us. What sort of scenes that we've seen in films or read in books do that trigger thoughts? What sort of theme are we trying to get across into this? And we work that into an improvisational storytelling theme. Now, that for some people is a piece of whatever. It's easy to do. And for other people, it seems nigh on impossible. How do you get from nigh on impossible to really easy? How do you get from being able to roll some words and work them into a story with a flow from not knowing what to do? Practice. You need to practice. You need to practice creating stories. It's an improvisational comedian. The people who get on the stage, they ask some words and they create a comedy or they create a joke. A lot of the time they're not made that up on the spot. They've dug that out of their memory. That's not a joke they've made up on the spot. That's a joke that they've got stored and reserved, waiting to be retrieved and dropped into this. That's all you're doing. You're finding story cues and you're dropping them in with these prompts that are coming in and you're creating a new story out of it. Practice. Make jokes. If you make jokes, so Mandy and I do this all the time, things will happen and we'll create this weird montagey type scene, this little scene, this little diorama, and we'll make a joke out of it. Practice. Whack it into your normal life. Create stories in your head. Create flows. Just have a session where all you're doing is you're rolling prompts and creating little vignettes out of that's the word. Creating little vignettes out of them. Practice. The only way to get good at improv is practice. There's stuff on YouTube. There's improv classes on YouTube that you can find that will advise you on how to practice exercises for improvisation. If you want to do that, then I would say do that as well. If you want to go to actual improv classes, actually you turn up for, you will find that there are improv classes near you that you can go to and you can work with other people doing improv. I was going to do one improvisational comedy class, but I thought they'd just irritate me, so I never did it. I wish I did now, because that would have been quite good for the stand-up. But just practice. Practice improvising stories, little bits, and then they will flow into your solo sessions a lot easier. But the difference between doing improvisation on a stage and doing improvisation by yourself in a solo session is, if the improvisational story that you have created and the direction it's going in isn't working after about 10 minutes, scrap it, retcon it, go back and start again. You don't have to do sunk cost fallacy. You don't have to sink down this storyline if you think it's not going to go somewhere. Now, I remember only one time, I think I've done it bits and bobs, but the one real time I've ever done that was when I was doing a Call of Cthulhu story and I rolled some keywords and I started chasing this story down and it didn't gel. And after about 15 minutes, I just scrapped it. It may have been longer. I scrapped it and went back to that point and then re-recorded it. I've never done that before. And it was the only time because I was creating this comedy story and it's Cthulhu. Cthulhu's not meant to have a comedy story. It was, the protagonist was talking to people in a village and there's some little old grannies and I started being funny and making jokes about, I thought it was funny, making jokes, and it didn't work. You don't have to pursue the story if it's not working. Come back, improvise again and try again. And then in the end you'll get it. So basically, that's oracles. Oracles are your closed question oracle or your open question oracle. The closed question is fast yes no answers. That's closed question. The open question is more creative sparks. You don't want to use tools that slow you down. Mythic for me slows me down, and even when I use the little app, I was just doing a yes no oracle and I might as well not have bothered. And so they don't really, you want your flow to be the main thing you focus on, things that help you flow and speed you up. You can buy a really good one off of various different really good vendors, or you can easily make your own. It really is not impossible to make your own. It depends where you want to spend your time. We do have that Trifold and oracles that should be available by this point. If not, it'll be available very soon on oracles, or I have several other trifolds. So the one on how to solo any game vaguely goes into the oracles and the game loop. And really, if you want to see oracles in action, you can find any one of my videos and you will see me rolling keywords and wrapping them into the story and improvisation. And all it is that practice with improvisation and practice with creating those stories. And you can do it. You really can do it. We can all do this. We all have this creativity inside us. We all have this ability to do this inside us. We all can do it. We all can do this stuff. And really, it just takes believing in yourself and believing that you can create these stories. Oracles are fun to use. And that is my take on oracles and how to use them. Hopefully it helps. Hopefully it was all right. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for being a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, do consider subscribing. And as ever, thank you so much to the Adventurers Guild for your support and supporting the creation of these videos. And because I've mentioned the trifolds, thank you so much to those people who are Patreons. Anyone joining the Patreon at the only real tier there's a consultancy tier, but ignore that one. Just as the normal tier, will get access to those trifolds for nothing. Every time I release a new trifold, they get that automatically, and I'm always giving out discounts. So the Patreon, so again, supports the physical bus PDFs, and the Adventurers Guild supports the videos. And now I've taken up too much of your time just trying to sell you stuff, and I do apologise. Thank you so much for your support. So thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your solo play and be creative. See ya.